But take a look. Russia unleashing the largest air assault ever on Ukraine since the war began 3.5 years ago. More than 800 drones and missiles were fired at targets right across Ukraine over the weekend, killing at least 4 people, injuring dozens more. Ukrainian forces say most of those, fortunately, were shot down. Canada, France, the UK condemning the attack. Retired Major General Scott Clancy is standing by. Scott's a former Director of Operations for NATO, the North American defense platform, of course, that Canada and the U.S. jointly run. Scott, good to see you. Much appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
I mean, this is the largest air assault, as you know, 800+ missiles and drones. Remarkably, most of them were intercepted by Ukraine's air defenses, but also targeting a government building. Meantime, we're talking about potential ceasefire talks that really, at this point, seem to be going nowhere. Your take?
So, yeah, 805 to 810 missiles. We say the largest in the history of the conflict so far. But a week ago, we were saying the same thing about attacks on the 28th and 30th. So we should see this as a trend. Of those 800 or so drones and missiles, only 13 were missiles. I say only because those are the ones that are causing the significant amount of damage. These are the ones that are penetrating the Ukrainian air defense systems and are striking places like the capital and causing the most amount of death and destruction. 750 intercepted and shot down by the Ukrainian air defense systems, but that's putting a strain on their air defense systems, which is why you see the call going out to the allies to bolster Ukrainian air defense systems with either more systems or the munitions to service them.
What does it say, Scott, about the Russian tactics and how they are evolving here?
So I don't see an evolution in the Russian tactics. I see more of the same: indiscriminate bombing of civilian targets, no discrimination between military targets and civilian targets, woeful lack of common decency to distinguish between civilian and military targets, and just uncaring about what kind of death and destruction they cause. Their intent is very clear: cause chaos across the military and civilian infrastructure, cause pressure on President Zelensky and the allies to sue for peace in Putin's terms, with security guarantees that would, neuter the Ukrainian military and their economy, and, apply pressure worldwide.
Speaking of pressure, we know the European Union and the United States are now considering further economic sanctions against Russia. General Clancy, at the same time, you get this from the Russians. They say, listen, you're not listening to us. No matter what you try to do economically, we are not going to stop what we're doing. It kind of the same sort of situation in terms of the devastating loss of manpower to the Russians. They just doesn't seem to make any difference to the calculus, no matter how many men they actually lose in eastern Ukraine. So what are the options here for the West?
So absolutely correct on how you're characterizing that. These sanctions, from the very beginning, we thought economic pressure, political pressure, diplomatic pressure was going to work. That is not the case. We are in a new global reality. And, even the meeting with Xi Jinping and the president of North Korea at the same time, bracketed by these two large air attacks on Ukraine, should indicate a return to hard power. The real options here that the West is coming to grips with. It's not just about bolstering Ukraine until a point where a peace deal can be made. I think we're at a tipping point where we're going to have to decide whether Ukraine is an ally that is going to be brought into the fold of NATO realistically and on a timeline, which is going to cause Russia to have significant angst, or whether we're going to allow Ukraine to be subsumed by Russia. Because those are really the two options that Vladimir Putin is presenting. And he's not going to stop his military operations or anything. And that doesn't matter whether it's President Trump's rhetoric or diplomacy or the EU's, furthered military aid to Ukraine.
Scott, I appreciate you taking time for CTV News. As always, thank you for this.
Thank you very much.
Scott Clancy, retired Major General with the Canadian military, former Director of Operations for NORAD.